live.
Well, hello. Welcome to Commissioner Connection. My name is John O'Grady. I'm the president of the Franklin County Board of Commissioners. And when we started these online conversations back in April, there were just a few COVID-19 cases in Ohio. Now there's more than 188,000 cases. This is an important opportunity for us to let the community know what's happening around COVID-19. So I hope that this is a good source of information about resources that might be available for our struggling neighbors. Today, we have three guests. Our first guest today is going to be Ed Leonard, the director of the Franklin County Board of Elections. We also have with us Nathaniel Stewart and Luke Fedlam of the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity. So we're going to have a great discussion about how counties are dealing with COVID-19, the financial crisis, and more. But you can submit your questions in the chat box and we'll get to them. But before we get started, I wanted to share a couple of points. We're going to talk about the election today. Obviously, Director Leonard is the director of the Board of Elections, and the gentlemen that are with us today from Alpha Phi Alpha are very actively involved in the voting process and getting folks involved in the voting process. But we want to make sure that we're here to educate voters, and we're not going to allow any partisan discussion today. We asked Director Leonard from the Board of Elections to appear today because there's a lot of last minute questions from our residents. We thought it's important to provide a forum to share information and to have him be able to answer questions. And in the second half of the show, we'll be with the members of the Alpha Phi Alpha, and they're a nonpartisan group. So please bear in mind that if you're here to ask political questions, those questions won't be answered today. So we thank you for your understanding on this issue, but we're only going to answer questions today that are about voting and about the elections process, not political or partisan questions. So we're going to start off with Director Leonard first before we get to the gentleman from Alpha Phi Alpha later today, or later in the show. Because Director Leonard needs to get back to the Board of Elections, get back to the work that he has, because if you haven't noticed, if you haven't been paying attention, it's crazy time right now up at the Board of Elections. We've had, Ed, we've had well over 50,000 people that have voted already in early vote, and that doesn't have anything to do with the number of absentee ballots that have come in. So we need to get Director Leonard back to work. So that's the reason why we're going to rush through with Director Leonard first, and then we'll get to the gentleman from Alpha Phi Alpha. So, Director Leonard, if you could talk first about give us an overview. Talk about your location, the size of your staff, how many voting precincts do we have? Talk about the availability of what's going on election day. Some basic info to talk to us about what's going on over the next 11 and a half days between now and the election. What are the hours of the locations that you're open, hours on election day, opportunities to vote on the weekends. Go through the rundown for me.
Well, we're located at 1700 Morse Road, which is, for those who've been around Columbus for a while, it's across from what used to be the old Northland Mall. Right now, it's right near the corner of Carl and Morse Roads. And so again, it's a big facility, but as you mentioned, it's full of people right now. So, but that's our primary location out of which we operate. But on election day, and we will be conducting election day voting, and that is out of 326 polling locations throughout Franklin County. Some of them are larger, some of them are smaller, just depending upon how many voters are assigned to each of those polling locations. They will be open 6:30 in the morning, and they'll be open until 7:30 at night. And anybody that's in line at 7:30, they will be able to vote. Again, I caution folks is just always give yourself a little bit more time. Don't try and cut it right to the very last minute, because if you're trying to park and then you get into the line after 7:30, you're not going to be able to vote. And so give yourself some time to make sure. And the thing is, right now, there's plenty of time. We're open now this week from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays. Next week, it'll be 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. And actually, the lightest hours are usually those later hours because people think we close at 5. So again, in terms of voting on election day, you have the normal hours, 6:30 in the morning until 7:30 p.m. And then at our early vote center, they can vote now. And then you're probably going to ask, do we have weekend hours? And yes, we do. So we have this weekend and the very last weekend before election day, there's early voting. On Saturdays, it's 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And on Sunday, it's 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. But both of those, Saturday and Sunday, will have hours for early voting.
All right, so Director, and I'm going to lead into this, or I'm going to follow up on this one, but voters can see their ballot and see what it looks like in advance. So can you share with us the link that folks can go to be able to see their ballot in advance?
Well, if they simply go to vote.franklincountyohio.gov, really quite honestly, you Google Franklin County Board of Elections, you're going to find it. So if you go to our main homepage, there's 2 links on the homepage that can take you to the pages. And essentially you put in a little bit of information about yourself, your name, your first name, last name, the year of your birth, and the street number for your home address. And you'll be able to pull it up and actually see your sample ballot. So you can actually know before you get there what candidates you want to vote for. So you can speed the process up.
Great. So we've got 11 and a half days left. People can vote early, which you talked about. You told it's 1700 Morse Road is the early vote location. People can vote there. They can vote on election day. To voteohio.gov or go to the Franklin County Board of Elections website, and they can see their ballot. My son called me from Cincinnati today. He's voting absentee. I heard he had questions. I gave him information. I didn't tell him who to vote for. We don't believe in that in our house. We don't tell people who to vote for. We give him information. He chose to vote for who he wanted to vote for. He had an interesting thing. He accidentally voted for somebody he didn't want to vote for, and then he asked me what he should do. I said, well, you only have 2 choices. You either go with what you've already marked, or you have to request another ballot, and you're going to run out of time. So he decided to go ahead and vote for somebody he didn't really want to vote for. Which was he was not happy about it. It was a judge. It was not like at the top of the ticket, or it wasn't like he voted for somebody that he's close to, his opponent or something like that. He voted. It was a judicial race, but so the advice is, do I his only other option was to request another ballot, and it's pretty late in the game to be able to do that. So he ended up just voting for somebody he didn't really want to vote for, but what were his choices at this point? But the point is, I then said to him, make sure you put a stamp on that, which he has stamps at home. Put a stamp on that and get that to the ballot, get that to the post office right now. You're only 13 or 12 or 11 and a half days out. So he was taking that to the post office today.
Good.
So there's all these options right now. There's news reports right now. They're saying that the turnout is very high. We talked about that earlier. Crazy high. It's high in every county. I talk to county commissioners across the state every day, and they're all telling me that turnouts in all their counties are really high right now. Are there any times during the day when voting in person at the Board of Elections, you mentioned it earlier, between 5 and 7, or what time do you close right now?
Well, this week it's at 6 o'clock. And so typically around 4 o'clock, it starts to slow down. Sometimes the late mornings are a little bit slower. And as I said, so next week it's 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. And the closer you get to the close, the more it seems to thin out, because people assume we close at 5. And so typically you show up between 5 and closing, and you can usually get in pretty quickly. What was I going to say about that is that, but again, if you are in line before closing, you'll be able to vote. So, and again, most of it's been on average about a half-hour wait, and in some of the busiest periods, it's been an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes at the longest. I think over the weekend it may get busier and longer lines, but again, I don't want the lines to discourage anybody from voting, because they do move rather quickly.
Yeah, no, when I've been up there, those lines are moving fast, and people people have been very pleased. They've been amazed at how fast the lines are moving. So if you want to eliminate the post office altogether, there's a drop box. That single solitary drop box. And we
Well,
have
we do have two drive up drop boxes. We have 2 lanes to drive up and drop box.
Oh, good.
Hey, we're trying to, because we know everybody's coming here to vote and everybody's coming here to drop off their ballot. So,
well, I apologize. I voted in the drop box when there was only one, but then
it was okay.
you've been given the authority to have more, so now you have more. So, can you tell folks where are those drop boxes?
There's one that's right in front of the early vote center. So that's one like if you're coming during our normal business hours, there's a white tent that is off to the left in front of Papa John's, in front of Sam Ash Music. And that's where it's a drive-through drop-off of your ballots. And then any 24/7 drop box. So if we're not open, there's a drop box in front of the early vote center entrance. And that one you can kind of drive up, get out of your car and put it in, or pull into a parking space and put it in. But it's open 24/7. It's under camera, video surveillance. So you don't have to worry about that from that perspective. So,
yeah, I voted on Sunday night at about 10 o'clock at night. And so easy to do.
It's easy to do.
So, well, I take that back. That's where I dropped off my, Sunday night, 10 o'clock is when I dropped off my request, right? Okay. I voted on Tuesday the 6th at like 1 in the afternoon, but I voted the very first day. All right. So do you still need workers for election day? Is it too late to sign up for that?
I wouldn't want to discourage people because we'll put people in a backup role, but we really, normally to run an election, we have between 3,800 and 4,000. This time around, we planned for over 5,500, and we've got plenty of folks who signed up, expressed interest. So we're going to be in very good shape come election day when it comes to poll workers.
So if folks want to sign up to help you out, how do they do that?
They can go to workelectionday.com is probably the easiest email address, or they can come to vote election.
We have somebody that's going to put that along with voteohio.gov and everything, and they'll put that in the thing. Don't forget, by the way, viewers, to put your questions in the chat box. So if you've got questions, go ahead and do that. But we'll have folks that are putting that on the chat line now. So, all right. So election day can be very busy, especially in presidential years. What's the expectation for voter turnout? How many folks are you expecting to come out and vote on election day?
We always try to stay away from that kind of prognostication, but
I'm asking you right now.
If you look at past elections, most presidential elections, Franklin County has been in the neighborhood of 70%. And by virtue of the fact that we've been seeing such a high increase in early voting, we're kind of figuring that the turnout could potentially be 75% or above. That's kind of what we've been operating off here internally.
Gotcha. That sounds about right. So folks have concerns over COVID-19. Obviously, people have a lot of, COVID fatigue right now. Share some of the steps that you guys have in place to ensure safety for the voters and all the poll workers.
Well, poll workers will be given masks. They'll be given face shields. We have a safety shield that'll go between, fairly inexpensive, but it's just simply a sheet that'll go between the voter and the roster judge, so that when a person enters the polling location, and first person they typically see is the roster judge, they'll be given one of these little styluses. People are using them at the early vote center, and on election day we'll have over 250,000 of these out at the various locations. It'll make the process as touchless as possible, because a voter will be able to use this to sign the poll pad. They'll be able to use this to make their selections on the electronic voting machine and not have to touch the equipment. But we'll have isopropyl alcohol and wipes for the machines. We will have disinfectant wipes for all the surfaces, tables, and so forth. As I said, the poll workers have to wear masks. We'll have masks available for a voter who may not have a mask of their own. trying to think of all the other precautionary, but we've done a lot to, we've spread out the equipment. We've put shields around some of the equipment where we can't socially distance the equipment. We've put taller shields around the equipment to create barrier between the voter and a voter that might be next to them.
So, all right, what plans are in place if a voter shows up and appears to be sick at the ballot box?
Well, we encourage people that if they, that's why we want to encourage people to use early vote and vote by mail, because you just never know what your personal circumstances might be, how they might change. But if they can always ask for curbside voting services, and we'll have folks come out, and then they'll have to make sure that they wear a mask, and we have gowns for our staff to wear to assist a voter at curbside. But again, that's one of the reasons why we want to encourage people to plan to vote early, because you just don't know. And you and I have talked about it before, just life happens. And it may have absolutely nothing to do with COVID. You may just be sick, unrelated to COVID. You have car trouble. Your boss needs you to come to work early. Childcare arrangements fall through. So life happens, and regardless of whether it's COVID related or not, people ought to make a plan to try and vote early, because you've got 11 days left to do it versus 13 hours on election day.
That's right. So if someone suddenly, on election day decide, they feel ill, is there anything they can, you mentioned some of them, curbside voting and others. Is there anything else that they can do?
They can contact the Board of Elections in terms of if somebody, in terms of getting them a ballot. I'd want to get back with you and maybe answer that, so I make sure I give you all the right information on that. But we do go out to hospitals. We're coordinating with Ohio State for some of the students that are in self-quarantine right now. And so
the big thing is if someone feels ill on election day, they should contact the Board of Elections.
Yes.
And that number, is easily.
Is 525-3100.
Yeah, it's easy. Okay. So what happens if someone shows up to the Board of Elections and they're not wearing a mask?
They will be offered a mask. And if they refuse a mask, they'll be offered curbside we can allow them to vote curbside. And if they refuse both of those options, they are allowed to enter the polling location. So we'll take steps to move them through the process as quickly as possible, and then clean all the equipment that voter uses. Now, again, hopefully the voter, even if they're not going to wear a mask, that they'll still use the stylus on the equipment, but we would wipe down all the equipment used by that voter. And we have had a couple of instances here at the early vote center where a voter has refused to wear a mask. But again, it may happen more so on election day than here at the early vote center.
So can you give the voters an idea of what they're going to see if they vote on election day? Like, how do they vote? And once they register on one of the machines that how it's printed, their the ballot box is sealed, the ballot's sealed and all that kind of stuff.
Right. When a voter walks in, the first thing they'll be given is the stylus that they can use. They approach a roster judge who's got the electronic poll pads in front of them. They may be asked for their license, because having a license is the easiest way to pull somebody up on the electronic poll pad. And then they pull them up on the electronic poll pad. The person would sign their name on the electronic poll pad. Then they'd be issued an authority to vote slip. With that authority to vote slip, they'll go over to a voting machine, and a poll worker would place a ballot card into the electronic voting machine and scan the authority to vote slip. And then that brings up the appropriate ballot for that voter. Because every voter votes on the ballot based on their neighborhood. And so then the person can make their selections on the machine using the stylus. And then when they're done, they'll give an opportunity to review it electronically on screen. And then if they're ready, they can hit a button on the screen that says print my ballot. The machine will print the ballot back. And it'll be a card similar, something that looks like this, just a long, slender card that'll have all their selections on it. And then they take that ballot card to a scanner, and they place that ballot card in the scanner. And at that point, they've completed the process of voting, and the machine will tell them, thank you for voting. And it'll note that, the public count on the machine will increase by 1 because it's counted their ballot. If they have to vote provisionally, say they weren't registered at the address where they live, then they'll go through a process where they'll vote a paper ballot, but they'll have to fill out a voter ID envelope. And again, but that process, they'll be able to handle at the early vote center for them. At the end of the night, that equipment's closed up, the ballots are brought back, as well as the electronic flash drive inside of the scanner. All that equipment is brought back to the Board of Elections by a bipartisan team. And then all that electronic media is read, and that's how we tabulate the results.
Great. So once that's all done, that's when you receive your I voted sticker, which is
yeah, they receive it when they're done. As soon as they stick their ballot in the scanner, that's when they'll be given an I voted today sticker. And we'll actually have some material from the county's Board of Health as well about some of the COVID precautions that they should be mindful of.
Yeah, that's a valued thing. I didn't get one this year because I voted absentee for the first time.
That's right.
So, and then
we're going to figure out a way to put an I voted today sticker in the absentee envelope.
Yeah,
hold it over inside of something else, but we're going to come up with something so that we can deliver an I vote.
I agree. Each voting precinct also is staffed with workers from both parties to ensure that rules are being followed.
Correct.
So,
all bipartisan. All of what we do here is bipartisan. So
that's right. What other considerations that people should know about if they're voting on election day?
People are hearing about observers at polling locations, about campaigning at polling locations. Campaigning at a polling location, the people who are campaigning have to stay outside of a 100-foot line. And so if somebody's pestering you about voting for them, but they're doing it as you're entering the location, well, then they're probably violating that. So, I mean, they have to stay 100 foot back from the entrance.
And there's usually flags, right?
I'm sorry?
There's usually flags that mark the 100-foot
line. There's flags that mark.
People are allowed to be out in the parking lot. If they're outside that area, they're allowed to be out there offering you a sample ballot or offering you a piece of literature. They're allowed to do that. They're just not allowed to do it too close to the polling location. They're not allowed to wear campaign T-shirts for one candidate or another. They're not allowed to things like that. Like if you can't walk into a campaign location to vote, or a voting location to vote wearing a Trump or a Biden T-shirt, right?
Well, they'll ask you to cover it up, but
you got to cover it up.
If they don't want to cover it up, if they're there to vote, then we can't prohibit them from voting because of that. But if you're just a campaign worker, you can't walk into the building to use the bathroom and keep your T-shirt uncovered. And the other one is the observers. Is that observers? If there are observers at locations, that's all they do is observe. They can't inject themselves into the process. They have to be signed up beforehand. So somebody can't just show up on election day and say, hey, I want to observe the process. Well, they have to sign up beforehand. And if they are a certified observer, then the only thing they can do is observe. So
yeah, they're not allowed to discuss politics with folks while they're there and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so I mean, in terms of what goes on at election day, you're right that campaign activity can take place, but it's simply limited to that 100 feet outside of the 100 feet from the entrance of the location.
Gotcha. So at what point and when do you guys count the absentee ballots?
We actually are able to start processing them now. The interesting thing about what you're hearing from other states, in some states can't even touch the ballot until election day. In Ohio, it's structured in such a way that in Ohio, boards of elections in Ohio can actually start processing the absentees now. So we review them, we confirm that everything's correct on the absentee voter ID envelope. And if it is, we can actually separate the ballot from the envelope and get it ready to scan. And we can actually scan them. If there's a problem, somebody left off their birth date, they left off they forgot to sign the envelope, we can contact that voter and say, hey, you have an opportunity to correct it. Be sure to give us this information. So we can start that process in the run up to election day, so that on election day at 7:30, we can report every ballot that was cast at the early vote center and every ballot that was cast by mail before election day. And so actually, and then during the course of election night, we're counting everything that showed up before 7:30 on election night. So, I mean, a lot of the results could be, out there at 7:30 because of all the votes that are going to be cast at the early vote center and all the votes that are being cast early by mail.
Sure. So is there any guidance for folks that are voting absentee?
Yeah, there is. On the envelope, it has all the information you need to fill out. Let me grab it. I'm going to step off camera. I feel like Marco Rubio. I step off camera for a bottle of water. But on the envelope itself, there are various highlighted areas, and the voter needs to fill those out. So if there's a highlighted area on your envelope, be sure to fill it out, because it's asking for, except for there's one area where it's asking for either the last 4 digits of your social security number or your driver's license number. And so, but aside from that, birth date, your address, your name, sign it and date it, do all those things on the ID envelope that it asks you to do. Take a moment to read the instructions. I know sometimes we think, oh, we've done this before, or I've done it before, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of people who haven't. So be mindful of the instructions, and like your utility bills or your credit card statements or whatever, on the back of the envelope, there are things that kind of, hey, don't forget to do this and this and this before you seal the envelope.
It's pretty simple.
Our signatures, forgetting to sign it and forgetting to put the birth date on it. But
it's pretty simple if you follow the instructions.
Exactly.
I think the two biggest things that I have heard about or noticed is that making sure you sign the envelope and making sure that the envelope is sealed.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
I would agree with you on that. So
I understand there were initially some problems with some of the absentee ballots. Can you explain what happened and what was done to correct it?
Well, we had a piece of equipment that failed, and then it caused one of the scanners. And there's we have a large automated high-speed mail processing system, or ballot processing system. And so, because again, when we're sending out hundreds of thousands of ballots, but what happened was a piece on that equipment wasn't functioning properly. And so what that piece is supposed to do is verify that the ballot going into that envelope is in fact the correct envelope. So we had 49,000 of those envelopes that we did where the ballot wasn't verified as it was being inserted into the envelope. And so because we couldn't verify that it was correct, we had to send out a replacement ballot. And so that's what when we sent out 237,000 ballots on the very first day. Unfortunately, there were about 49,000 of those that the system did not verify were the correct ballot. Now, some voters got the correct ballot and some of those voters got the wrong ballot. And so in an abundance of caution, we had to make sure we resent all of those 49,000 voters a replacement ballot. And that's already been done. Those went out not this week, but last week. And so many of those voters have them. We've been sending out postcard notifications. Another set of postcards are going out shortly. So we're going to like first notice, second notice, final notice, trying to get those. We're making phone calls to people to encourage them to use that replacement ballot and get that back into us.
So what happens if they use the first ballot, first absentee ballot that they received, and that's the wrong one?
Well, again, they should be receiving a replacement ballot. If they get the replacement ballot, they should vote that replacement ballot. Even if the original one was the correct ballot, or they think it was the correct ballot, they still should vote the replacement ballot. What we're going to do is our equipment set so that it will separate out the original ballot from the replacement ballot, so that now if somebody doesn't send the replacement ballot in, we will count the original ballot to the extent we can count it. So, but again, my goal is to get all those replacements ballot in, because then we know for sure that those voters voted all the correct races, all the correct candidates, and issues that they were supposed to vote.
Okay. All right. So let me get to the last couple questions here before we let you get back to work, and then we bring on our other two guests. Can you tell voters what happens when the voting locations close at 7:30? I know there's a zillion things that happen, but maybe as briefly as you can.
Well, anybody who's still in line at 7:30 still gets to vote. So some of our locations have to stay open beyond 7:30 because there are people waiting in line. So anybody that's in line at 7:30 will get to vote. And then once that's completed, what happens is one of the poll workers is designated and at the end of the line, so that anybody else showing up after 7:30 will be turned away. And then the rest of the poll workers will assist those voters in casting their ballots. And then there's a process of closing the polls. And closing the polls, the poll workers have to print the results from the voting equipment, print the results, and post those results. So they all sign off on it and initial it, and then post those results. So if anybody wants to see the results from that particular precinct, they can. And then the equipment, or the ballots and the electronic USB drives that I was talking about earlier, those are brought back by a bipartisan team, Democrat and Republican, ride back together to the Board of Elections to deliver all of that equipment to the Board of Elections. Then at the Board of Elections, all that is the flash drives are read in. The system knows to recognize the flash drives, and so you can't read in the information more than once. And it knows what it's looking for, so it's not going to finalize results until all the flash drives from all the voting locations are read. In the meantime, at 7:30, as I was talking about the results from election or from early voting, as well as all the absentees that were received before Election Day, all those get read in. And so at 7:30, voters are going to see the results from probably 350,000 to 400,000 votes cast, because of all the votes cast at the early vote center and all the ballots that are being returned before Election Day. And then what we're doing is anybody who's showing up at the Board of Elections before 7:30, those ballots, we know people are going to be hand delivering ballots to the very last minute. And so we'll be ready for those as well. And goodness gracious, there's a lot going on. And then like I said, we're getting material back here and keeping everything sorted. There's a lot of manpower, a lot of staffing that goes on here at the Board of Elections to get everything processed. And then all of our poll workers bring all their materials back here to the board.
And then you're still processing votes that are coming in, that are postmarked by Election Day, but coming in afterward.
Yeah, I guess that's something I do want to address, because it always seems there's this notion being thrown out there that, well, final unofficial won't be until 12:30 at night, or 1 o'clock at night. That's always the case, because we're waiting for people to deliver materials from the far corners of the county. We're waiting for results from overlapping counties. And so election night unofficial being well into the evening is normal. And then there's a lot of this notion out there that all these late ballots arriving after Election Day. Well, that's part of the normal process. If a voter has their ballot postmarked by the day before election, that Monday, November 2nd, if their ballot's postmarked by that date, it has up to 10 days to arrive at the Board of Elections. If it arrives within that 10-day window, it's going to get counted. And that's a great benefit for those who live, citizens who live overseas and use Franklin County as their last residence in the States. Military members who, and then any voter. I mean, if I live in, Dublin, and I want to put my ballot in the mail on Monday and wait till the final day, and I want to see what's going on, I want to thoroughly consider my options. But if my ballot's postmarked on Monday, the day before election, that's why shouldn't it get counted? We give time for that ballot to arrive in the mail. The other part of it is provisional ballots. Say somebody didn't get their absentee ballot and they go to their polls on election day because they didn't get their absentee ballot in time. And that's one of those, we've got voters who, somebody can request an absentee ballot until this Saturday before the election. Crazy as it may seem, we'll be putting ballots in the mail on Saturday before the election. That voter may not get that ballot in time. So they're going to go to the polls on election day and they're going to have to vote a provisional ballot. Well, we have to wait to make sure that no absentee ballot arrives. So that 10-day period, we have to wait and say, all right, if this person requested an absentee, but they voted provisional, I want to make sure that absentee doesn't come back to us. If it doesn't come back to us, we'll count the provisional. So a lot of that, but again, it's all for the benefit of voters' access to the ballot. So, and who could be against that? And so that's why giving them the extra 10 days is beneficial to our overseas voters, our military voters, and essentially any voter that might need to come to the polls and vote provisionally because they didn't get their absentee ballot, didn't show up in the mail.
Ed, thank you so much for taking the time today.
No, thanks for helping us get the message out. We appreciate it.
Gonna let you get back to work.
Thank you.
You got a lot to do. It's a busy time. So
All right.
we appreciate you taking some of your time today to be with us.
No, glad.
And stay safe and healthy up there at the board, and keep up the great work. You guys are doing a fantastic job.
Thank you. Great team effort countywide. So
thank
you.
Now, if we could have our other guests unmute their video and their with us today is we want to welcome Nathaniel Stewart, who is the chair of A Voteless People is a Hopeless People, and Luke Fedlam, Fedlam. I'm sorry, I apologize for.
No, you got it right the first time, Commissioner.
Fedlam.
Yep,
It's
that's
Fedlam?
it. Just like Bedlam.
Well, it says Fedlam on my screen and Fedlam on my sheet here. So I apologize, Mr. Fedlam, who is the chapter president of Alpha Phi Alpha. For people who are unfamiliar, can you tell us about the fraternity and the Voteless People is a Hopeless people group, and how do you help voters?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, Commissioner, thanks so much for having us on today. And I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation that you had with the director earlier. So thank you for that. I'll share with you a little bit about Alpha and what Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is all about, and then I'll turn it over to Nate to talk a little bit more about what our efforts are with Voteless People as a Hopeless People. So Alpha is the oldest historically Black college fraternity in the United States, and so we were formed and founded on December 4th, 1906. And ever since then, we've been focused on a few things, focusing on developing leaders, promoting brotherhood and academic excellence, all while we provide service and advocacy for our communities. And really, Voteless People is a Hopeless People is one of our national programs in a way in which we, in a nonpartisan way, can really work to serve and advocate for our communities.
Great. Nate?
Yep, and I'll touch on Voteless People as a Hopeless People. As Brother President mentioned, Voteless People is a Hopeless People is a national program of Alpha. It was initiated in the 1930s. It was a program that was focused on encouraging education and registration amongst African Americans. During this period in time, African Americans did have the right to vote, but were prevented from voting due to various voter suppression tactics, such as poll taxes, retaliation, and honestly just lack of education about the voting process within itself. And so the program slowly expanded to focus on political awareness, and that political awareness grew to incorporate town halls, candidate forums, to learn more about the candidates. And so those efforts are the same efforts that exist today, just in a modified version. We still look to engage voters. We still look to register voters. We still look to educate voters in a nonpartisan way.
That's great. Well, I'm glad to know you guys are out there helping folks to vote. I've been involved in a battle against voter suppression for the last couple of years here in Franklin County, and so we appreciate all you're doing. Do you have any events that are coming up prior to the election?
Sure. So we've been doing quite a few events. Early on, it was about voter registration, right? How do we just register people to vote? Number one. Then when that deadline kind of ended, we transitioned more into the voter education piece, which is how do we just educate voters? And we could spend the whole afternoon talking about that in terms of just different ways in which people need help in understanding why do they vote down the entire ticket and understanding the entire ballot and all the issues and everything that are on it. But then also, we're in this phase too of mobilization. How do we mobilize voters for early voting that the director had mentioned earlier and all that Ohio allows for that. But then also just planning for that and how we get people, to actually go to the polls. You've registered, you've educated yourself. Now, how do you actually get out there and cast your ballot? So we're really excited. We have a great event coming up this Saturday. And since Nate's kind of the brainchild behind putting it all together, I'll let Brother Stewart here share with you a little bit more about that.
Yep. So we hear people talk about a lot of times how your vote is your voice. And so for us, when we were founding the idea of this event, that's what we were looking to do. We wanted to bring our communities together because there's a lot of divide that's happening. And so we were looking for an event that could bring everyone together and really take to the polls, let their voices be heard, let our presence and our thoughts be felt in terms of exercising the right to vote. Over the summer, there was a lot of energy and enthusiasm around, making our voices heard and sharing our opinions. And so we wanted that to continue in the efforts to exercising the right to vote. So we tried to host something that allowed us to carry that same enthusiasm over and still empower people to exercise the right to vote, to be proud of that, to honor that right. And so we decided to host a rally, which will be on this Saturday, October 24th. We're very excited about the rally. We want people to come energized, excited about voting. We want to help create that enthusiasm. So we'll be setting up an event at the Department of Job and Family Services on Morse Road. It's right across from the Board of Elections. So we'll set up there. We'll have a live DJ. We'll have food trucks. And from there, we'll that'll be our starting point for the rally. And then we'll carry over to the Board of Elections. We'll escort individuals across Morse Road. We'll have security there as well. And really, we want to be there as a support to answer any questions. And also, just like I said, to keep the energy around voting, to keep people excited. If we can keep them energized while they're waiting in line, we'll have line watchers who'll be watching the line to see if the lines get shorter. And so every hour throughout the event, we'll be escorting different waves of groups of potential voters over to the Board of Elections.
So give people those details again. That's Saturday, the 24th at what time?
Yes, that's Saturday, October 24th, starting at 7:30 in the morning, all the way up until 1 p.m. We'll have a live DJ, we'll have food trucks, we'll have a lot of energy around voting. There'll be information out there. We won't really be focused on any type of candidates, it's just get out to vote information. So information that they can do additional research before they head over. That last minute kind of thought process, if they have some questions, getting those questions answered. I know you mentioned you were talking about poll worker sign up. We were looking to see if we can also additionally sign people up who are interested in being poll workers. Brother President, miss anything along that?
No, I think that's everything. I mean, it's just as a reminder, 1721 Northland Park Avenue is the actual address. So definitely come out. We just want to be able to create just a fun atmosphere, right? Voting is our right. And I think so often we get bogged down with just the pressures that politics can just bring, but this is a celebration to be able to go out and exercise the right to vote. That we have early voting. Fingers crossed the weather's going to be good on Saturday morning, but just a fun way to be able to spend time with folks and be able to walk across Morse Road and cast their early vote.
Yeah, 1721 Northland Park Avenue. By the way, more specifically is on the south side of Morse Road behind the Kroger. It's over there in front of the animal shelter, anybody right near the Menards. I don't know if I can give folks any better of a description of where it is. And on Saturday, it is supposed to be a fairly bright sunny day, about 50 degrees, and I'm sure people will be able to get an update on the Buckeye game and all that good stuff because the game doesn't start till about noon that day. So
That's right.
Pregame right there. So there you
That's
go.
exactly right. Go vote and then watch the Buckeyes.
That's right. That's exactly right. So there you go. That's the big event prior to the election right there. So what other type of assistance can you offer folks on election day?
So on election day, I think that's kind of that last day, right, where you have to get out and you have to go vote. One of the things that we always try to do among our membership is make sure that we're there and available for each other whenever there is opportunity to be able to help, transport, members to the polls, right, where necessary. We have, just to give you a little bit of context around Alpha and our history, we have both college chapters, right? So all the, schools here in Central Ohio, and then also alumni chapter, right? And so our alumni chapter is Alpha Rho Lambda chapter here in Columbus. And when you join and become a member of Alpha, it's a lifelong thing. And so we have members of Alpha that are well into their 90s. And so we always try to make sure that we are there to support them and help them in any way possible as well. So we'll be making sure that we really do that among our membership on election day.
Great. So if folks need some assistance with voting, how do they get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, so it depends on what the assistance is. I think one of the things that we always like to say is, hey, we're an organization that's really focused on how do we serve and advocate for the community, right? And so we want to do these events to help bring people out, get people registered. Obviously, now we're at this phase where we want to get people to actually vote. So from an assistance perspective, I always recommend, hey, vote early, right? You never know what's going to happen on November 3rd. So come out early. You can come out on the 24th, like we talked about on this Saturday morning. If they want to be able to get, further information, my recommendation is always to go to government website to get your information, right? So you can go to ohio.vote.gov or vote.ohio.gov.
Vote.ohio.gov, yeah.
Yep. So you can go through that. That's because, again, we're a nonpartisan organization that really does focus on, just making sure that people vote, right? We don't tell people what to vote. We don't advocate that they vote a certain way. We just want to make sure that people are exercising their constitutional and democratic right to go out and cast a ballot in our elections.
So have you had to make any changes due to COVID?
Yeah, so we've changed quite a bit. I mean, we've done a lot more, obviously, as the entire world has done, a lot more virtual things, which, create opportunities in new ways, right? I'm definitely the optimist with all of these things. And as we think through kind of everything that's going on and the challenges that we've seen, sometimes you just got to find those silver linings to power through some of the hard times that we've experienced economically through COVID itself. For us, obviously a big part of the fraternity is just being able to be together and supporting each other, being out in the community and serving. We've still been able to do that in different ways. We have some plans coming up through the rest of the year as well to help support. We know Thanksgiving is probably going to be a tough time for folks, given what we're seeing economically. And so making sure that we're out there and really serving the community, but doing it in a safe and responsible way. So really, we've made a lot of changes to try to get as much information out to people virtually as possible, but where appropriate, where safe, we try to also still, be engaged and be out in the community. That's
great. Do you have any precautions that you've had to put in place to help put people at ease during this time?
That's a great question, Commissioner. Precautions, I mean, the biggest precautions that we've taken is there are some big events that we do in the city of Columbus that unfortunately we've had to make some significant changes to. We have what's called the Alpha Esquires program, which really focuses on Black youth in high school, on Black males in high school in particular, where we do a big event, with them in the springtime that we had to make adjustments to that. We do a big event in the city called Project Alpha, where we look, every year we have around 150 or so Black youth that come in, Black male youth that come in and just hear from members of the fraternity, city leaders and others around, making wise and informed decisions on, strong and healthy relationships, interactions with police, etc. And unfortunately, we've had to make some changes due to that because of just kind of wanted to make sure that we keep everybody safe. But just like what we've seen kind of throughout the rest of society, we improvise, we adapt, and we overcome. And so as time has gone on, we've started to find new and creative ways to still engage with folks as well. And so we're doing, a lot of Zooms and a lot of video conversations, as I think the rest of the world has started to do. I mean, I don't know about you, but I get zoomed out sometimes. But when we have young people who take the time to still get on Zoom, who want to learn, who want to hear from mentors and people who've been where they've been, how do you say no to that? You keep staying engaged.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We did a thing yesterday morning, or no, I guess today's Thursday, Tuesday morning. We just passed a resolution about fair and safe elections, and suggesting that we need to we wanted to be able to say to the public in Franklin County that all the work that's being done and put into this election by the Secretary of State, by the Board of Elections, that this election is a fair and safe election that the voters and the residents of Franklin County can trust in and believe in, and that a peaceful transfer of power is something that the residents and the people in Franklin County should be able, and throughout the state of Ohio, should be able to trust and believe in. And so we suggested to folks, and we sent this out to our colleagues in all the 88 counties across the state, and we asked them to consider this resolution as well. And it's an intriguing notion that we would have to suggest that we would have to pass a resolution to suggest that, and that we would have to encourage our colleagues across the state of Ohio to do that as well. But we did that, and then just today I had a meeting, kind of hand in hand to that. Had a meeting today to discuss the possibility. We're asking the legislature to extend our ability to, because they gave us authority earlier this year, back in the spring, to have our meetings on video conference. And so, as your suggestion that we're all getting zoomed out, we have COVID fatigue right now. A lot of people have COVID fatigue, and so our ability to be able to have our meetings and hold our meetings on video conference has been fantastic. It's opened up the public's awareness to us, our ability to be able to do our business on video conference. And so what we've suggested to our staff is that number one, we need to get with the legislature and have them extend this legislation that will allow us to continue to do this, because that legislation expires on December 1st. So we need the legislature to extend it beyond December 1st. But number two, once they do that, hopefully they'll do that. But once they do that, we want to be able to plan for these meetings to, one, continue to be video conference, but then two, once we come back and we get back to normal course of business post pandemic, we want to be able to use this video conferencing tool to be able to marry that with our normal course of business.
Yeah.
And so when we're back to meeting in person and having our normal meetings, we want to be able to do that and have video conference options available so that we can do both, so that we can meet in person and meet over video conference, and so that the public can still access us. And so I guess to put both of those things into perspective, here we passed a resolution saying that elections should be fair, that elections are fair, that the public should trust in this election cycle, that the public should expect a fair and peaceful transfer of power. And oh, by the way, we want to continue to do this type of meeting into the future so that the public can be more involved in all that we do. And so, this stuff that you guys are doing is tremendous. So have you had a lot of requests for help so far through this election cycle?
So we have had some good conversation with folks who want to hear the message, right? I mean, they want to know. I mean, I think, listen, and you kind of hit it on the head when you talked about it's a unique and intriguing proposition to believe that you have to make a resolution that says, hey, these are safe elections. But when you think about even, what happened in our primary time, and voting in the primary time, because it's just because this was all so new. But I think that leads into your point, which is, on the one hand, yeah, absolutely. Like, we will have a peaceful transfer of power. We absolutely will have fair and safe elections. And we learn. I mean, I think that's the point, right? All of us are learning through this pandemic. And, to your point, the idea of now saying, okay, we're going to make our meetings even more accessible to the public, even more transparency. That's a great outcome of the situation that we're in. And we're doing the same. So, we've had people that have reached out, in terms of, us supporting them in different ways that align with our mission and align with what we do. And we try to continue to do that. But one of the best ways that I think that we can help, and we've really had a very focused and intentional effort around voting piece, knowing how critically important voting is. And to your point around, fair and safe elections, absolutely. And so what we want to do is make sure, hey, if you have the opportunity to get out and cast an early vote, get out and vote. I mean, there are opportunities. The state has made it available. And I think that all of us will be able to look back on this election within the state of Ohio and be proud of the procedures and processes put in place to be able to have a fair and safe election.
Absolutely.
No question.
I think a good example of that, I think a good example of that is we've always had voter education and voter registration efforts, and we've always been intense in those efforts. And looking at how we had to modify our strategies this year really brought a good outlook on some of the efforts that we do. It brought a lot more awareness to the efforts that we've been doing. We just had to do it in a modified way, which has created more attention around what we're doing. One example of that is the Why We Vote video campaign, where we ran a campaign on why we vote and sharing the reasons. We were looking to create a video that cut across class, that cut across age, and that really focused on the intent of voting and the reasons why people vote with different backgrounds. And having those individuals share why they vote and how they tie that into their background. And that campaign has really brought a lot of attention and shed a lot of light on some of our efforts. And these are the same efforts we've been doing. These are the same stories we've been sharing. It's just that we had to modify our strategies this year. So this is a good example of how the pandemic has pushed us to be a little bit more innovative, to be a little bit more creative, and that has brought positive attention our way. So very exciting.
Well, as much as we are, a lot of us are having pandemic fatigue or COVID fatigue, we are also learning so much. I'll tell you, for the longest time through this, we were all just feeling sorry for ourselves. And I think that over the last couple of months, we've started to see silver linings. So many silver linings, so many things that we've learned, so many things that we've seen. And this is, they're coming around a lot nowadays. We're learning more and more about how to operate, how to streamline, how to become more efficient. There's so many more silver linings. I wanted you guys to see this, by the way. This is my mask of choice these days. This
nice.
is what I've been wearing all day today.
I support that. Maybe we should get some though with that Ohio to be gold, black and gold. That happens to be the color of our fraternity. Idea. So we might have to do something about that.
There you go. Get some alpha vote masks. I like that.
There you go.
I've seen those vote masks in all sorts of colors. Mine, yeah. I promised at the beginning of the show that we weren't going to be partisan or political in nature. I guess. I did buy a blue vote mask. My mother-in-law is the president of the local chapter of the League of Women Voters. Her vote masks are all nonpartisan. They're white, but I've seen all kinds of different vote masks out there. Vote T-shirts. There's all kinds of vote logos, vote bumper stickers. I've seen all kinds of vote stuff out there, but mine just happens to be blue.
I picked up on that, but it was very subtle. I was like, I can see it. We're riding the line, but it's safe.
I get a lot of compliments for those. We also, the Franklin County Board of Commissioners back in May, the week before the George Floyd incident, we passed a resolution declaring racism a public health crisis. And so at the same time I bought that mask, I also bought masks that said racism is a public health crisis. And so I wear those on a regular basis as well. But I'm also very strategic and very intentional about where and when I wear those masks. And folks who know me know that I don't shy away from a fight usually. And so a lot of times I'll wear those masks in places where I know that I'm going to be in people's business when I wear those masks. But we these days, your message on your mask can say a lot and mean a lot. And so being that it's 11 and a half days before the election, the vote mask, my wife and I we only have one, so we fight over when it comes out of the washing machine, we fight over who gets to wear it. But today I got it. So anyway, so before we close here, we're about on that time. One of the questions I like to ask folks that are on this Facebook Live with me, I'm all about helping and promoting small businesses, especially businesses that have been so impacted during this pandemic. And if anybody that knows me knows that I'm a former restaurant owner, and I have a lot of friends that are in the restaurant business. So I'd like to ask you guys, if you would, if you could share with the viewers out there on Facebook Live, maybe a coffee shop or a restaurant that you've been frequenting during the pandemic, either to sit on a patio or to order some takeout, someplace where you like to frequent maybe on a regular basis just because they're a friend of the family, they're just someplace where you particularly like the service they have or the food that they serve, somebody that you want to help to stay in business because they're the kind of place that you go to on a regular basis. Let's start with you, Luke.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say one of the places that I go and I try to get some takeout from is B&K Smokehouse. They're down right around Maine and Ohio-ish area. But Keith and Bo, man, they know what they're doing. So go check them out and give them some love.
I've been in there. My wife works at the Jerry at 1111. And so I've been in there a few times. Took my friend Danny O'Connor in there, they know what they're doing for sure. And I have 4 kids, and 2 of them are big, healthy boys. We'll say a college kid and a high school kid that can do some damage, and so they like when I bring takeout home from there. They do what they're doing at B&K. How about you, Nate?
So for me, I think me and my wife are one of our favorite places is Headquarter. It's owned by Ron Jordan. He's a good friend of the family. So we frequent there a lot during the pandemic. They're located at the Bridge Park. It's a newer development. So that's a restaurant that I would promote.
Yeah, there you go. That's another good choice. Well, folks who have watched this know that I could sit here today and rattle off a whole bunch of places where that are my favorites, and I'll tell you, the small businesses that are not hurting, the restaurants that are not hurting during this time are the pizza joints. People that own pizza parlors, especially the good family-owned pizza parlors, are not hurting during this time because ordering a pizza on used to be a Friday night thing, I think, for a lot of folks, but folks are ordering pizzas on a regular basis right now. And my friends at Emilio's on the West Side, always been one of my favorites. I grew up with the Sabato family. They're doing a great job. And the folks at Enrico's up on Franz Road up in Dublin, they're doing a great job. And the Rotolo family, I go on and on. I grew up with a lot of Italian families that are pizza connoisseurs, and they do a great job. And everybody in the pizza business these days is hopefully they're all doing well. And if you're a pizza shop owner, send me a note, and I'll promote you on here because they all deserve to be doing well. Anyway, gentlemen, I appreciate you being here. Nate Stewart, Luke, and I'm going to say it right this time, Fedlam. It's make sure I get it right. I appreciate you guys being with us. Thank you for all you're doing. And thank you to Alpha. You know what? I'm a Browns fan, so I'm not a big fan of the black and gold. I'm a big fan of the Crew. I'm a big fan of my alma mater, Ohio Dominican University Panthers, and now I'm a big fan of Alpha. But otherwise, you know, it really takes a lot for me to say I'm a big fan of the black and gold. So now I'm a big fan of Alpha as well. So thanks so much for everybody for being with us here today. If you know, we be sure to follow us on a regular basis on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. Until next time, for my friends Nate and Luke, I'm Franklin County Commissioner John O'Grady. Stay safe and healthy out there. We're all in this together, folks. We'll get through it. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
Good one.